Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Breer, and welcome to episode 66 of the 11FS Insider Breakfast Show. In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday straight into your homes at 8:30 BST, here live and on LinkedIn. So today's show is going to be the first of the Spotlight series that we're going to be doing. So every week on the Breakfast Show and the Breakfast Show US, we'll be speaking to CEOs and founders of early stage fintech companies, whether it's an up and coming startup, but much and much more in that space as well. Each of those businesses will have a focus working towards either closing the financial inclusion gap or using their technology to progress communities of all sorts. And this morning, I'm really thrilled to be joined by David Fisayo. I'm not sure if I've nailed that pronunciation, David, but we'll come back to that very shortly. David is the co-founder of Wealth8 and Foundervine. And what we're going to be doing is talking about how Wealth8 got started, the importance of wealth creation and economic empowerment for the Black community, and what more can be done to provide access to Black entrepreneurs in the UK. So good morning, David. Thank you so much for, getting up early and spending some time with us this morning to talk about what you're doing. How's it going?
No, good, thank you. Hi, David, as well as too. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, really good. Got up in the morning, had to do my run a little bit earlier, but I'm excited to be here and speaking with you. So yeah, looking forward to today.
Well, thanks for taking the time. If you could start with maybe giving us just a bit of an overview of your background, and we'll get into all of the things that you're doing with Wealth8 in a second.
Okay, so background, British born in London, spent some time living out in America and also in Nigeria. Then finished my education here in the UK. So post studying business finance at Durham graduating in 2012, I spent about 8 years at KPMG in our digital consulting division, where I specialized in customer and digital proposition design for financial service companies. And this is where I really developed my interest in fintech and digital innovation within the finance space, and also initially coming across 11FS. So, and I'm now the co-founder of Wealth8, and I'm also director at Foundervine, which is a non-profit that specializes in startup and scale-up acceleration for underrepresented founders.
Fantastic. And what's the sort of inspiration between sort of founding these companies? Because it's everybody sort of thinks being an entrepreneur is sort of like some sort of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs fantasy, doesn't it? But it's hard work, isn't it? This.
Yeah. So really for me, so my passion has always really been about how do I use my skills and experiences to support underserved communities, and most importantly, leverage digital technology to have positive social impact. So that's really been the drive about everything I've done in my career to date, and that's been the inspiration behind what I do at Foundervine, and now what we're doing at Wealth8, which we'll talk more about as we go on.
Yeah. Well, on Wealth8, let's sort of unpack a little bit in terms of what you're trying to do there. Do you want to give us a bit more of a broad overview? Because I think in terms of what you're trying to, you've got a very big aspiration, right, in terms of actually what you're trying to achieve.
Yes. So Wealth8 is a technology-driven platform that seeks to connect women and millennials of African heritage with wealth and investment opportunities. And what we really believe is that regardless of your background, everyone should be able to manage their finances and tap into the same wealth opportunities that for decades have kind of been inaccessible or not fully catered to our community.
We always talk about underserved or overcharged, and actually, undoubtedly there is a racial wealth gap in the UK, right? So, and this seems to have been, this is something that hasn't just happened overnight, and probably, as you say, won't be solved overnight. But this is a sort of an accumulation of really what's happened over a long time in terms of the predominantly investment savvy, mostly white guys getting access to advice, right? So what do you think we can do to kind of break that down or break that cycle?
So I think touching on the wealth gap, so one thing I'll firstly kind of highlight is, it's a good question. I think the current COVID-19 crisis has illuminated some of these inequalities which we see in society and also in the financial sector. But we must say that this is not new information and it's not a recent phenomenon. So this has been around prior to everything that's gone on. So I think it's important to understand the kind of historical context behind why we are where we are, and that kind of helps inform what needs to be done moving forward. So a recent Money Me Trust report called The Colour of Money kind of highlighted that in Britain, a British white family likely to have times 10 more savings or wealth than a Black African family. And that is, for every £1 in savings you have, there'll be 10p of savings for Black African or 20p in savings for Caribbean African. And whilst 1 in 5 Black people in the UK own property, that is 2/3 for the white, someone from a white British background.
Yeah.
So the historical context really to kind of put in play is that I think there've always been inequalities within the British Empire or the Commonwealth, however you want to really describe it, which has always affected wealth, savings, health, and other aspects. And in time, in the beginning, Britain was kind of seen as the Holy Grail, and the Commonwealth was there to serve the Holy Grail in terms of resources and support. And I guess the irony is that the Commonwealth, wealth was not so common in the Commonwealth. And the next thing you kind of see is that the connection between race and migration. So immigration normally kind of supports low-skilled, or has in the past been low-skilled labor to come into the market. And we saw that with Windrush. So for those that are not fully familiar, Windrush Nation is that after World War II, when there was a large kind of dent into the labor markets, there was a big opening up to particularly Black Caribbeans, but also other parts of the Commonwealth, for people to come in and support the NHS or support other low-skilled jobs. And what that meant was that from the very beginning, there was already a discrimination in terms of the labor markets. And that discrimination has something that's kind of then forced like some systematic inequalities, which we are seeing some of those still in existence today, in the terms of if you're working in a lower paid job or lower skilled job, you're likely to have less income. And if you have less income, you're then likely to believe you can save as much. And then that has a knock-on effect on savings. And then that wraps up from a generational point of view. So in terms of what can be done, that's where really like Wealth8, what we're looking to achieve is that there are kind of addressing some of these nuances and understanding some of the differences. There's a lot of investment that needs to really happen at that beginning piece around financial literacy and education, but tailored to the community, so in a way they could fully understand. And also there's a big piece around that saving early, that even the income piece is not something we can directly solve, but that's things that corporations, governments, and initiatives which we're seeing being discussed at the moment will hopefully begin to address, where you start moving people up, they're making more income, and therefore they are also able to like move social mobility and move into higher positions. And then we want to then give them the opportunity and the tools to be able to invest, but understand the importance of investing, understand the concept of wealth, understand how the difference between the markets, and how you be able to start building the community and pass this down on to future generations.
I mean, it's like you say, it isn't an easy problem to fix, as you say. This is something that has been generational, and as you say, it's not just a product. Actually, this is changing people's aspirations and actually giving people access to things that change over. What can we do in a short term to change inequality for 3, 4, 5 generations, right? So and it's a difficult thing to, I mean, a current account for millennials, it's like, great, well, I can visualize what that does and the problem that immediately solves. But I guess when you start thinking about the product that you need to put in place here, why is it important to focus specifically in this, and actually focusing specifically in trying to address this problem? I mean, how do you create a product that tries to do this? Because, like I say, the layers of, I mean, it's not just, as I say, it's not just like millennials. It's like, okay, millennials get it. It works like this. This is very broad, but also very specific in terms of the focus, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're both backgrounds in finance, and we understand the concept of market failure. And I think the things highlights the current systems we're now to operate, for whatever reason, is not served effectively that community. So one might say it's failed. So I think from that point, answer the first question around why do you need a product, or why do you need something different to the status quo, is because the current system has technically, from the market point of view, failed.
Yeah.
And in terms of, and then one might go, okay, why has that been the case? So if the people that are providing the services or the products don't fully have a recognizing or understanding of maybe some of the nuances with the people they're trying to target, or how best to target. So how do you, from a marketing point of view, but how do you speak, how do you target, how do you reach? I feel that's where you need different solutions which actually come in from a point of view of going, the product itself, which is the underlying asset, it's a product. It's a product that will be readily available. But the piece is, how do I get people to start understanding the importance of that product, to start engaging in that product? And one thing is removing some of these barriers, which is, oh, I must be wealthy to start building wealth.
Sure.
And it's like, you don't have to be wealthy to start building wealth. Wealth is built as a result of the savings that you accumulate over time and compound interest and the growth phase. So that as simple as that may sound, a lot of people don't necessarily have a full understanding for that. So that's really where we're kind of coming in to make sure there's building a community of people, but then also really investing in that financial literacy and that education, and that's then providing the means to then do so afterwards, and just making it more accessible for all.
Yeah. And sorry, in terms of like, I guess specifically when you sort of look at like the nuances to wealth and money management, I mean, particularly for people with African heritage in the UK, how do we distinct there? Because I mean, to your point, I'd say that the financial services ecosystem has been set up for predominantly, it's been made by white men, really predominantly focused on white men. So actually, I mean, we've had this debate before. I mean, actually, there's a massive underrepresentation in the market for products that meet any need other than squarely the people who made it making products for some people who look like them, right? So, but what are the sort of nuances, do you think, in terms of, is it down to the way in which the product is communicated, like you say, the community around it, the process that goes around it? I mean, what's the connection, do you think?
Right. So I'll touch on two nuances specifically. So one, there is an element of, okay, how it's targeted. So as you said, if we all talk about diversity and innovation, it's good because if you're producing a good that's meant to be the mass market, by default, you would think rationally you should have a diverse range of people producing that good because it's not just made for one person.
Yeah.
And then, so if the good has been made, but the people who are then marketing the product, there could be an element of it being marketed on certain channels, through certain mediums, using certain terminology, which is the terminology, but actually without having someone in the team to influence and go, oh, actually, by the way, that is not, or this is, here is a different term that we use. Without having someone in the team to give that perspective, there's that element where actually you might just be cutting out certain people on your go-to market. But the second piece is, there are other nuances. So interestingly, an African family in the UK, a white British family tends to be, couple may have 1, 2, or 3 kids, and their goals are simple: pay for the house, maybe buy a house. I want to give the house to the kids at the end of the day. An African family, I would say I've got so many cousins, and like my auntie is not my mum's sister or my dad's brother, or sorry, not my dad's sister. My mum's cousin's cousin is my aunt. Therefore their kids are my cousin. And there's a big culture in the African community is that if you're doing well from your family point of view, you also have to help people maybe back home. So even though I'm a secondary UK, I would have to, there's a kind of obligation to also, when I can, help others who are less fortunate back home in Nigeria and other African countries that people come from. So I think it's important to know, how are you spending your money at the end of the day, then should influence how do we then help someone plan the way they're going to spend their money, when we know that the way they spend the money, there's slight nuances or differences at the end.
Yeah. And like you say, it's small things like that that mean and I say small, I mean, it's a when you say it out loud, it's a small use case, but there's 1,000 of those every day. That means the things that are made for different groups just don't fit the needs of a very large population of the country. So, I mean, do you think, you sort of said earlier on that, I mean, coronavirus is really sort of highlighted the problem, highlighted this sort of inequality in the financial service system rather than creating it. But definitely the sort of light that's been sort of shined on this, and actually the sort of disproportionate effect on BAME individuals in many ways through this period. I mean, how do you think that will, change the relationship between Black people and money? Do you think that is something that is being addressed now, or do you think that this is something that there's a lot of focus on now, but ultimately, I mean, it's down to people actually making products and making changes, right, rather than just being outraged, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think that's very, very good point. So we're under no illusion that the current kind of spotlight of these discussions may less down or fade away or move to a certain point in time. But I'm a big believer in that the kind of initiatives we kick off today are really what's going to equal that change in society in the future. So at this point in time, it's time that people need to be bold and like introductions of certain products or introductions of certain initiatives which are actually directly things which don't fade away because they're publicly out there and they started, and with the right support, they will deliver on the outcomes they intend to do so. So I think for the community now, people are starting to think about money differently because all of a sudden, overnight, you've gone to either you may have no income, and you have, for instance, larger percentage of the Black population operating like the gig economy or kind of freelancing, and all of a sudden they've been impacted more. So people are now realizing, oh, I should have money for a rainy day as such. And an important piece is to come in to go, yes, but having money for a rainy day does not necessarily mean you must have had loads of money in the beginning, because I think that used to be a barrier. So it's like, I must have money to start generating money. But it's like now that actually that small amount you do every single month that you can afford to do, and you just take the fact that my income is not just to live. Like, you can't be financially free if you live on your income.
Yeah.
But having things that now come in play right now and make people start actively change those habits and actually start doing will then have a positive impact in the time to come. So yes, there is a big change or understanding of this relationship, and it's now important that we have bold products, initiatives, and people who are actually helping support this change.
Well, and it feels like you say, it feels like through, I mean, there are very, very few silver linings of this pandemic, right? There are not many where we're like, yo, that was a good thing that this happened.
Yeah.
But actually, at least the precarity of the systems and some of the inequality in the systems has, like you say, been very much highlighted. I mean, from a societal perspective, but as you say, I think from an individual perspective, I think people are like, wow, like I was living very precariously with the amount of savings that I had. So, I mean, do you think, particularly within the target group that you've got with looking at Black millennials, do you think that group has kind of it has been a bit of a realization that actually they need to invest and actually not invest in themselves for the future that they want to create, essentially?
Yeah, no, so I think it's a huge so we kind of support women and millennials with African heritage and different kind of parts. So, and with the millennials, I think what the things they've highlighted is that actually my generation we're quite entrepreneurial. Like, we're very entrepreneurial, actually, not even quite. We're probably one of the most entrepreneurial groups I know. And so we want to achieve financial freedom, and that's always kind of been at the forefront. And what this impact has now had is really sparking that need and want that was already there to engage in discussions. Like, we've been running webinars and discussions, and the amount of people that come in and like they're asking very practical questions. But I think the important bit people always looking for is how, okay, like I want to do it, like I'm ready. How do I do it?
Yeah.
And like, please help, I want to do it. So now it's that point of, okay, and that's where we're kind of coming in going, great, we're going to give you the tools to do so, and we're going to educate you. And financial literacy, I want to highlight, is not about university education. It doesn't matter where you work. So it's not necessarily, okay, I've got a 2-1 from this university and I work in a corporate office in London, therefore I'm financial literate. So it's a different kind of education, which is probably not fully taught. Like, I don't necessarily remember going to university, like remember being sat down and taught it at schools as such. And this is probably for the wider community as well, but like there's a thing that's going to be taught in households. So it's now people going out, going, I want to learn, but being able to find reputable resources to give them the correct education and correct knowledge, and then take them through that journey to then become economically empowered to do so. So it's not about, okay, just put your money away, but understand how you're putting your money away. Understand the difference between short-term investment, long-term investments, the type of funds, savings, and it's really going, okay, you can then actively plan because you have a great understanding of the financial markets and everything that's out there, and you have an understanding of your goals and how you bring these different bits together to achieve that. So, and really great. So I think our generation are really poised to kind of close the gap because we're smart, educated, entrepreneurial, and we're now really out there going, look, we want part of the change we're looking for is not the societal change, but it really is change in economic empowerment and being able to participate fully.
Yeah, I mean, and as you say, it's, I mean, the education, people put education as such a, like you say, if you've been to this university and got this, I mean, I've seen some of the most well-educated people do some of the most stupid things I've ever seen in my entire life. You know what I mean? So the practical application of actually the sort of, in the same way as diet and exercise and all of these things, it's getting financial services to be part of the daily rhythm of people's lives, right? It's something that you're thinking about. So, and like you say, it's not about putting away 90% of your paycheck. It's about little and often, in the same way as food and, and health and everything really is, right? So there's a few interesting questions for you over on LinkedIn. So actually one from Bianca from 11FS. So I'd love to hear from David, what makes millennials so primed to help bridge this wealth gap? Because, I mean, you touched on it a little bit there about, I mean, the sort of spark of change and almost the, standing up and saying, like, this is wrong. I don't get why, we're generationally acting like this. I think millennials seem to be less likely to just follow in the footsteps of what their mum and dad did and are asking questions for themselves. So, but what do you think? Do you think it's those things, or do you think there's some other underlying change that we're seeing?
So I think it's probably twofold. So one, there's probably two elements to that. So let's say if we looked at, say, maybe Black millennials and then maybe white millennials. One is I've seen, especially like my generation and my friends, people who are maybe from white backgrounds are coming up to actually acknowledge that actually, objectively, I do not agree with there being a wealth gap. That if you told me, is it right that £1 is saved by this household and there's 10 people by this household, I'll think it's wrong. And if I think that there's a percentage of like people in this position, but like they will objectively see that's wrong. So I think, and what you're seeing now in terms of even like the movement is you're having people who are speaking up and actively going, what can I do to support my maybe Black friends or Black community in making this change? And one way that people are doing that also is through, for instance, supporting Black entrepreneurs and Black businesses. And in that scenario, what you're doing there is that you're funding money into a Black business, which then has a knock-on effect of it going into the Black community, and that then leads to expansion of the business and also a wider support for the community, which builds wealth for the individual, but then builds ripple effect of wealth for the others. So that's one element, which I think it's great that you're seeing other people kind of join to do that as well. And then within the Black community itself is that I think so there has been advancements. There's still a lot to kind of do, but there's probably advancements in, especially at the lower levels. Maybe you have more people maybe from gaming backgrounds who are in maybe more high skill paid jobs in the city who are making money. So who can afford to, if they can afford to save and actually plan, if they plan properly, they can actually begin to build this wealth that makes that change. So I think they are now going, okay, I know that I'm in a position to do so. How can I do so? So I think it's that understanding and realizing that, okay, why isn't it that I didn't have, or my parents maybe didn't do it as effectively as I did? And there's information now. So you can go out and get the information to understand, or you can speak to people, and people are having conversations via social media in groups. So it's really, unless you doesn't have access to any of those, like it's quite an easy time to be able to understand, especially with discussion at the moment, to understand what it is, and then to go, I want to find out, how do I change this from my point of view? So I think those two aspects is what we're seeing with millennials.
Well, I mean, as we said, with everything that's it's 4 or 5 generations to get to this place. Hopefully it's not going to take us 4 or 5 generations to get out of this place, right, in terms of greater equality when it comes to financial services. So I mean, what more can be done, do you think? Because I mean, this isn't an easy subject to address, actually. And it's not just a bank thing, it's not just a government thing, but actually it requires, and it's not just to your point, it's not just an education thing. So it feels like there's a number of different players that have to play their role to address this. But I mean, everything that's happening, obviously, with the renewed attention around the BLM movement, particularly, it feels like there is enough attention now to properly address these problems.
Yeah,
which is ultimately good, right? Like it's a need for people, again, though, to act rather than just to be outraged by a statistic, essentially, right?
No, exactly. And I've always thought like some of the biggest barriers, especially maybe to like entrepreneurship, was that maybe group has been access to networks, access to community support, and like role models who can support, but then access to capital. So I think it's great you're seeing now that these commitments are coming out by large organizations and from finance who private companies or public sector companies. And what I'm hoping for is that the public announcement and declarations really brings a new sense of accountability.
Yeah.
So if you've committed and it's out publicly there, and like in this day and age, 5 years down the line, if you said you're going to do it and you haven't done it, someone will tweet at you and go, hey, by the way, you haven't done this thing. So I'm hoping this brings a new sense of accountability. So that's good. We've seen some of that. Maybe from the government's point of view, I know the government's point of view, like if you look at the startup community, there was some certain schemes that started at the beginning of COVID, which were great, and the kind of intent was right. But from the very beginning, it was like maybe T-bills and future funds were not necessarily serving a certain community as much as they could have done. And I know like recently yesterday, so the Future Fund released their statistics, and I think roughly around 250 businesses have been funded. I think like 12 from all Black founders, which again is kind of disproportionate. So there's more that they maybe could be looking at. So, but from a government point of view, there's this famous African proverb called "It takes a village to raise a child," and what that means is that it's not the individual. There's not just one person that's responsible for the growth of the next generation or the child. That it takes a community of people coming together. So I think the government really needs to open up the table and have more people who are closer to grassroots, who are closer to the communities, to have a seat at the table when they're discussing policies or things they want to do to support, because that would bring an added perspective at that point where you're actually thinking of what needs to be done before it's done.
Yeah.
Then go ahead.
And like I say, the product you're trying to create, everything that you're trying to do. I mean, Wealth8 again has a very high aspiration in terms of where are you at with the product? Because I mean, it feels like you've got a lot of people watching here. I'm sure would like to help you in any way in terms of kind of making that happen. So, how can we help? And where are you out in the journey?
Great. So we've kind of launched like an MVP, but it's initially to kind of get pre-registration of interest. So please do visit wealth8.com. We are launching later this summer. And that would be the products will be available for people to start investing later this summer. And so for anyone who's got an interest, please do reach out. You can connect to me on David Fisayo at LinkedIn, or do email us at info@wealth8.com. But do reach out. So what we're really looking to do is kind of get this message in front of as many people as possible. And once we go live, we'll soon start a funding round post that as well. So again, people who want to support the community, who want to support initiatives, do reach out. It'd be great to have that discussion at that point in time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, David. It's I really appreciate you taking the time. And like I say, it's a very a difficult thing to address. But if there's anything that anybody can do watching this to help them, please get in touch in terms of either expertise or just connectivity, I guess as well. So fantastic, and good luck with the proposition. All right, folks. Well, that's all we've got for you today. I'm afraid we've run out of time. That half an hour just literally evaporated. So I don't know where it kind of went to. So this is the start of what we're going to do from a spotlight series in terms of actually offering and shining a light on companies who are really trying to do impactful things, particularly areas where it's a early stage fintech or somebody who's doing something a little bit more noble from a community perspective. So if you have any suggestions, or you know somebody who is doing something particularly impactful in this space, drop us an email on podcast@11fs.com or directly to me at david@11fs.com as well. That's all we have time for you today. I'm afraid tomorrow I'm going to be talking to Dr. Sue Black, OBE. So who is, if you don't know Dr. Sue, you really need to go look her up on Twitter. She's very, very entertaining, technology evangelist, computer scientist, social entrepreneur, all sorts of stuff that she does. She's a very, 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 very smart person, I have to say. What we'll be doing is talking about her career and everything that's gone on. But that's all we have for you today. I'm afraid we will see you same time, same place tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody, and stay safe. And thank you again, David.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.